An ecosystem is a system of living organisms interacting with their environment. When ecologists study an ecosystem, they examine the biotic and abiotic factors in that region to see how those factors interact. Biotic factors are living factors relating to organisms in their environment. Biotic factors may include the number of microorganisms, plants, animals, and humans living in an area. Abiotic factors are non-living factors relating to organisms in their environment. Some examples of abiotic factors are temperature, soil composition, water, sunlight, and atmosphere. In a previous lab, we looked at some of the biotic factors in 5 different ecosystems. In this lab, we will examine an important abiotic factor, water. Fresh, clean water is a vital resource with a limited supply. We should treat our water supply as a precious resource. But do we? According to the United Nations World Water Assessment Program, nearly 2 million tons of industrial chemical waste, agricultural fertilizers and pesticides, garbage, and sewage is dumped into our freshwater supplies every day. All of these pollutants are contaminants in our water. Anything added to or mixed with a pure substance, such as water, is a contaminant. As we have seen, many man-made contaminants are carelessly dumped into our water supply. However, contaminants may also enter our water through natural processes. As water flows into a lake, river, or underground aquifer, certain minerals in the rocks and soil dissolve and are added to the water. Some minerals and other contaminants come from the pipes that conduct water to our homes, schools, and businesses. As water flows through metal pipes, contaminants already in the water slowly corrode the pipes, and metal contaminants are added to the water. Some minerals, such as sodium, calcium, and magnesium, are beneficial because they supply our bodies with the electrolytes we need for normal metabolic health. Other minerals, such as iron and copper, are good for us in small amounts, but large amounts are harmful. A few minerals, such as lead or arsenic, are harmful even in small amounts. However, even minerals that are beneficial to our health may negatively affect the appearance or taste of our drinking water. In this lab, we will perform water quality tests to determine the contaminants in 2 water samples. One sample is from the river that is the source for our drinking water. The other sample is from our local water system. This water comes from the same source, the river, but it has been treated at a water treatment facility to make it safer for drinking. Treated water is water that has been processed to improve its quality. After the water was treated, it was conducted through pipes to this location. We will test both water samples for contaminants. For many of the tests in this lab, we will use test strips. A test strip is a strip of paper or plastic used to measure the concentration of a chemical or the characteristics of a liquid. A portion of each test strip contains 1 or more chemical indicators. A chemical indicator is a chemical that indicates the presence of a substance by changing color. Some test strips contain 1 chemical indicator, like this test strip, which is used to detect copper in water. Other test strips contain 2 or more chemical indicators. Test strips are a convenient way to test water for contaminants, even when the researcher conducts tests away from the lab. We will now test a sample of our source water to determine its pH, total alkalinity, total chlorine, and total hardness. All 4 of these qualities are measured with 1 test strip. To avoid additional contamination of our sample with our test strips, we pour a small amount of the source water into a test tube before we perform each test. We dip the test strip into the water and swish it back and forth for 5 seconds to make certain the indicators soak up enough water. We need to wait 20 seconds for the chemical reactions to complete. Then, we compare the color of the test strip with colors on an indicator chart. The top indicator tells us the pH of the water. pH is a measure of the acidity or the alkalinity of a substance. This test strip can measure pH from a range of 2.0, which is highly acidic, to 12.0, which is highly alkaline. This is the closest color match on the indicator chart. We see from our comparison that the pH of our source water is about 8.5. This test shows that our source water is slightly alkaline. Let's test our sample of drinking water with the same kind of test strip to determine its pH and see how it compares with our source water. We see from our comparison that the pH of our drinking water is about 6.5. This test shows that our drinking water is slightly acidic. How does the pH of our drinking water compare to the pH of the source water? The pH of the drinking water is less than the pH of the source water, which makes it more acidic. Even though the drinking water is slightly acidic, it is still safe to drink. Drinking water with a pH of 5.0 or lower is potentially harmful to your health because of the amount of acids in the water. Acids in water can be hazardous to our health because they can damage our teeth and bones. They can limit our body's ability to absorb calcium, and they can contribute to digestive problems. Acids can also corrode water pipes. A pH test can tell us many things about our water, but it does not tell the whole story. For that reason, we must use other indicators to give a more thorough report on our water quality. When minerals dissolve in water, they form microscopic, charged particles called ions. Ions are atoms or groups of atoms that have a positive or negative electrical charge. Certain ions, such as carbonate, hydroxide, and bicarbonate ions, are alkaline and help neutralize acids in the water. The measure of the concentration of alkaline ions in water is called total alkalinity. Our test strips can measure total alkalinity of water from 0 to 500 parts per million. Parts per million, which is abbreviated ppm, is the number of ions of mineral found in a sample containing 1 million molecules of water. In addition to health benefits, the water we drink usually tastes better if some alkaline ions are present in the water. Surveys show that most people prefer drinking water with a total alkalinity between 80 and 180 parts per million. Let's determine the total alkalinity of our source water. We see that the total alkalinity of our source water is about 240 parts per million, which is outside the ideal range. What is the total alkalinity of our drinking water? The total alkalinity of our drinking water is about 80 parts per million, which is within the ideal range. How does the total alkalinity of our drinking water compare with the total alkalinity of our source water? The total alkalinity of the drinking water is less than that of the source water. In addition to pollutants and mineral contaminants, water often contains biological contaminants, such as bacteria, protozoans, and algae that might be harmful if ingested. Chlorine, in the form of chloride ions, is added to many water supplies to combat biological contaminants. The measure of the concentration of chloride ions in water is called total chlorine. Total chlorine, which is abbreviated TC on the indicator chart, is also measured in parts per million. The United States Environmental Protection Agency has determined that a concentration of 4 parts per million of total chlorine is the maximum safe contaminant level for drinking water. Let's determine the total chlorine of our source water. We see that the total chlorine of our source water is 0 parts per million. What is the total chlorine of our drinking water? The total chlorine of our drinking water is about 0.2 parts per million. How does the total chlorine of our drinking water compare to the amount in our source water? Since drinking water has been treated, its total chlorine amount is higher than that of the source water, but it is still well within safe limits. Earlier we said that carbonate, hydroxide, and bicarbonate ions are beneficial. Other minerals that form beneficial ions are calcium, magnesium, and sodium. However, these ions can be harmful if there are too many of them in the water. Water with a high concentration of calcium, magnesium, or sodium ions is called hard water. Water with a low concentration of calcium, magnesium, or sodium ions is called soft water. Hard water can damage plumbing because it leaves mineral deposits inside pipes. Hard water also makes it more difficult to get dishes and clothes clean. The last indicator on this test strip is for total hardness. Total hardness is the measure of the concentration of ions that produce hard water. Like the last 2 tests, total hardness is measured in parts per million. Let's determine the total hardness of our source water. We see that the total hardness of our source water is about 120 parts per million, which is considered moderately hard. What is the total hardness of our drinking water? The total hardness of our drinking water is about 50 parts per million, which is considered only slightly hard. How does the total hardness of our drinking water compare with that of the source water? Treating the drinking water has reduced the hardness, but the water is still not considered soft water. We also have tests for other contaminants, such as sulfates, iron, lead, copper, pesticides, and biological organisms. Biological organisms include bacteria and algae. Here are the results of our complete test of both water samples. As we can see from the test results, the source water contains more contaminants, including sulfates, iron, and copper. It also contains pesticides and potentially harmful biological organisms. However, our drinking water contains one contaminant not found in the source water. The drinking water contains chloride ions. This indicates that chlorine is fighting biological organisms in the water, which is also beneficial. From these test results, we can conclude that drinking water contains fewer harmful contaminants, so it is better for our bodies than the source water directly from the river. This is our final biology lab demonstration. We hope you enjoyed them and found them helpful. If you missed any of our previous lab demonstrations, you can watch them online. At this time, proceed with the corresponding activities.